So just before I sort of launch into showing you any screens, just to sort of explain what Coursecheck is really about. You know, customers tend to come to us very often because they've been using tools like SurveyMonkey and other free or cheap survey tools. And the reason they come to us is because although the actual survey forms might look broadly, a survey form looks much like any other, it's everything that happens around that. So typically we find we talk to companies and they're downloading the data into Excel, finding it really labor intensive to try and analyze it. So we really focus with Coursecheck on two areas, I suppose. One is broadly what I would call operational efficiency. So, how do we get surveys built? How do we get them in the hands of the instructors? How do we get learners to do it? And then after the survey's been completed, how can we easily see, is there anything we need to act on, sort of instant visibility of what's going well and what could be better. So that's what I call it, kind of like the operational side. And then there's the quality side, really. What's the big picture? How can we actually see the trends, see the analysis? Are some courses getting better feedback than others? That sort of thing. But again, making it really easy to see what's going on. So there's two parts to the demonstration I'm going to show you. First of all, the learner experience, if you like. So what does a survey form look like? How do people get there? And then secondly, we'll go behind the scenes and talk about the outputs and how do you actually get those insights. So let's start with the creating a review process. So look, here's a survey form. Obviously you'd configure this with the questions that you want to ask. A few things to point out. Over here on the left, you can see that we're talking about the name of the employer, the course, the date. That's already built into, if you like, the survey form. So the learners are just simply answering the questions that you put in front of them. How do we actually get to this point? Well, again, we've thought about that with Coursecheck. So depending on the format of the training, if we were running this course like now, we're running an event on Zoom, I would be simply saying as the trainer, right, I'm going to put the survey link in the chat and we're going to all click on that and we're going to spend a few minutes collecting the feedback and we're all going to do it right now. If, on the other hand, this was a face-to-face event, we're running in a classroom, then I'd be saying, here's the QR code and, get your phones out, point it at that, and we'll do it that way. So you can also send survey links out by email. So there's lots of different ways you can get here. And, another example of what we thought about is how do the trainers get their hands on these survey links and QR codes? Well, Coursecheck will do that automatically. So once your events are set up, we know who the trainers are. Trainers would then be emailed, every Friday, here's what you've got coming up next week. Here are your QR codes. Here are your survey links ready to go. So that's how we can do it. We advocate strongly doing it in the classroom because we think that's the easiest way to get a very high response rate. In fact, no reason not to get 100% response rate if you get everybody on board with that. So the questions, as I said, they're whatever you want them to be. We support, all the usual sort of question types of slider scales and yes, no's and Likert scales, et cetera, et cetera. You can see there's some structure here, though. Summary questions. We've got questions about the instructor, questions about the course itself, about the venue, if it's applicable. So another example of dynamic behavior is that if this was a virtual event like this one is, then actually that section would just not appear. So Coursecheck will adapt itself. And you may well have different survey templates for different courses. There might be overlap. So the concept is that we have what we call a question bank or a question library. You'd create all your questions there. And then from that, you can create survey templates by saying, okay, for this course, I'm going to use that question, that one, and that one. For another course, it might be slightly different. And then you can associate these templates with specific courses. So, for example, every time I run this particular course, Coursecheck will know which survey form is required. There's no limits to how long the survey form is, but we recommend less is more. We all get inundated with requests for feedback. And you can also do this in different languages. We support 12 different languages. So if you're running an event where you've got French, German, or Japanese speakers, etc. You can present the entire feedback form in their language. So if I go on to the next page, which is simply the about you, and again, this is configurable. So this is the most sort of basic version of it. Just who are you? Learners do have the option to remain anonymous if you want to give them that, and then they submit the feedback. So it's very straightforward. We've made it easy for your instructors, easy for your admin people, and easy for the learners to make this process work. So let's go on now to behind the scenes. So if we log in, you might be greeted with something that looks a bit like this, or a dashboard. Some of you may use Net Promoter Score. That's the question, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this course to colleagues? And if you use that, we support that concept of Net Promoter Score. And I'm just going to cover a couple of different areas really around reporting. I'm not going to go into any of the mechanics particularly, but so end of course reporting, that would look like this. So we divide it up into what we call detail feedback, which is we ran a course today. What does that feedback look like? Is there anything we need to jump on immediately? Then we've got the analysis. So that's the sort of the bigger picture, looking at trends by course or by trainer or any other ways you want to divide it up. And I'm also going to touch on AI generated reports, which is obviously it's quite a recent addition for Coursecheck, but it's a fantastic way of analyzing learner comments. You can see here we've got end of course, but we also do support follow-up feedback. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to concentrate mainly on end of course. Follow-up feedback is really very similar. It's just typically the questions will be very different. But in terms of the way Coursecheck works and the analytics, essentially it's the same. So let's start off with looking at detailed feedback. Just go here. And typically, if we're running this in a live environment, we'll be looking at this week's events or last week's perhaps. I've got some custom dates here. And so we've pulled up, 4 events that we've run recently. And you can see here, because I clicked highlight negative feedback, you can see a little sad face here indicating that somebody didn't like something. We can click on the little plus sign, go into a bit more detail. And now we can see the various comments that learners have made and this sort of graphical summary of what does that feedback look like. And I can see straight away, it's this chap, Michael, here with the sad face. So again, he didn't like something. I mean, looking at these scores, they were at 4s and 5s. What's the problem? Well, let's go down another level. And if we click on the plus sign now, we get down to the actual survey form itself. So here are the questions on this particular survey form. And immediately we can see here that it's the pre-course information that Michael scored a 2 on, and that's what triggered the sad face to appear. Incidentally, these kind of reports are also automated. So rather than coming in here like we are, just looking, Coursecheck can email out negative feedback alerts, can deliver to your inbox with a link. When you click on it, and it would take you straight here so you can see what's going on. And also things like comment summary reports can come to your inbox, every week or every day, depending on what's appropriate. From here, we can do things like create a specific event report. So if I wanted to perhaps share this report with somebody else in the business, then we can create with a single click, and again, it's configurable, but something more like this. So this is relating to a particular course on a particular date. And you can see we get some nice sort of graphics at the top, and a sort of breakdown of whichever questions you want to include on the report, with some scores here. So it's all very configurable. We can choose to make these learner names anonymous if we want to. And crucially, it's very shareable. So you can see here, if you look at the survey link, it's a long, what they call a GUID string. That means I could pop that link in the chat to you now, or I could pop it on an email to people and essentially get this report shared amongst other stakeholders. They could simply click on the link. They wouldn't need to have a Coursecheck account, and they'd be coming straight into this page, and that's what they'd be able to see. So that's really what I talk about with the sort of immediate feedback. If we now move on to the analysis, which is the bigger picture. And you'll see we've got various sort of tabs here across the top. We can analyze feedback by course, by trainer, by venue, specific questions. So for example, that question about the pre-course information, it might be that I want to then go and look at that question and look at it much more broadly and see, was that learner just a lone voice, or actually perhaps other people are questioning or not happy with the pre-course information, in which case maybe that's something we need to do something about. I'll show you an example of another tab, business units. Now this is one that's configurable, so we've just chosen to call it business units for the purposes of this demonstration, but it could be division, it could be regions. Any way that you want to analyze the feedback, we can support it. You can have up to another 4 tabs like this. So not just one way, but you might want to analyze it by business unit and by region, or by type of training, whatever. So the key thing is, though, to start with the end in mind. What is it you want to try and measure, and then work backwards to realizing what it is you need to set up. And so looking at it by course as an example, we can see here all the different courses we've been running over this period of time. I can immediately, with a single click, compare reactions to these different courses, top to bottom, bottom to top. I can see little trend indicators here to tell us which way that feedback is heading. And if we want to perhaps look in a bit more detail, let's look at this one, internal QMS auditor. It's had 210 pieces of feedback. We can drill into it. And now we can see all the different instructors that have been running that particular course. And again, we can sort this top to bottom, bottom to top. So, it might be that we can say, well, perhaps 1 or 2 of the trainers are getting really good feedback on this course. What's their secret sauce? What are they doing that the others don't know? And use that as a way of trying to sort of share the knowledge. Or perhaps it could be people who are not delivering it as well, and we need to think about how we can help them. So again, it won't give you all of the answers to your questions, but it will make it very easy for you to see, if you like, what's going on. Coming back then to so we talked about detailed feedback, we've talked about analysis. Let's now just talk about AI generated reports. So what we've done with Coursecheck, we've done an integration with ChatGPT, because as I said, it's very easy with software to analyze numbers, all those charts, and we can analyze scores very straightforwardly. But when it comes to text, it's a bigger challenge. And a lot of the treasure with feedback is often buried in those comments. So it's just a really nice way of saying, look, here's a few hundred comments from learners over the last period of time. What's it telling me? What do I need to know? And I'll just show you an example. Here's one on negative feedback. So I actually had this from a customer recently. They said, I'm not interested in looking at all the good feedback. I want to know what it is that could be better. And so the way this works is we've got these various different report types here. So this one's on negative feedback, but we could have a focus on a particular instructor, or it could be on a particular course. And behind the scenes, then we've got a set of instructions for ChatGPT to say, go off and get me that negative feedback. In this case, we just picked a date range, and we haven't put any other filters on this, but we obviously could. And what it's done, and I'll just run to the bottom actually, because just to show you. So this has analyzed, in this particular example, almost 10,000 words from around about 240 comments. And, this was one I ran earlier. I mean, it literally took like 20 seconds or so to run. It's that good. And, this is a sort of something that just you couldn't do manually, or if you did, it would just take a ridiculous amount of time. And you can see what ChatGPT's produced here. I don't know, many of you probably have played around with that, so you're familiar with the concept. Essentially, we've just sort of gone in the back door of ChatGPT and pulled this report back out again. And the beauty of this is that once we've got it here, we can then easily share it. So I could share it in an email, I could share the link to it, or I could copy the link and paste it in the chat. But again, we're very keen on not just producing insight analysis, but making it really easy to share it within the organization. So you can see the different sorts of things. Here's an example, and one other example of one about a particular instructor. So picked on this chap, Albert, a report about him. So you can see here, we focused on Albert as the filter. We said, find me all the reports about him. And again, going down to the bottom, this is, again, all 8,000 words from 164 responses. And it's just a really nice summary of all the comments about the courses that particular instructor delivered. I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to focus mainly on end of course feedback. I'll just show you one example from a follow-up feedback. So again, it's entirely up to you what questions you want to ask, but clearly when you're asking questions at the end of a course, they can only go so far in terms of actually what difference is this training going to make, because the learner has not yet had a chance to actually apply their learning. So we support follow-up feedback forms, get a totally different set of questions, but we would encourage, questions about impact and what you're doing differently now. And this is the sort of thing you could easily pull out, a specific question. I've not been able to apply my new skills yet, or I can now perform some tasks or many. At Coursecheck, we like that kind of question where you have descriptive options for people to choose from, and you're asking them to say, which best describes you. Now, we're not prescriptive about it. The Coursecheck, you can actually use whatever questions you like, but we're strong believers in this sort of question, giving you good hard data that you can do something with. And that really is all I particularly wanted to cover on this very short presentation. There's obviously a lot more detail we could go into, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. So to summarize, yes, Coursecheck is a course evaluation system. Why is it different from other tools? It's because we've got all this sort of automation and easy setup to make it actually very straightforward to collect the feedback in the first place. And secondly, because it's specifically for training, we've made it really easy to see what's going on. You don't have to download data into Excel, and not only see what's going on, but also to share it amongst your stakeholders and use it for quality control purposes and make a difference. That's what it should all be about in the end.